Off in the salty ocean, off where the waves roll free. The sparkling water rises, then crashes to the sea. Out amongst the breakers, you'll have no need to fear. It's true, it's the blue frontier.
Welcome to another episode of Rising Tide, the Ocean Podcast. This is David Helvarg, and my co-host for the most is Vicki Nichols-Goldstein of the Inland Ocean Coalition. Hi, Vicki.
Hello there, and it's a pleasure to be here.
You may not have read how President Trump, having launched a war of choice on Iran that set off a global oil crisis, is now trying to use wartime emergency measures to open up more of the California coast to offshore oil drilling. So today, rather than our usual blue news you can use, we're going to once again dedicate the entire episode to the ways this administration is threatening the health of our coast and oceans. Our guest today is Angelo Villagomez, a senior fellow at the Center for American Progress in Washington, D.C. Angelo's focus is on the ocean, community, and indigenous governance, including for the Chamorro people of the Mariana Islands. I first met Angelo when he was working out of Saipan to create the Mariana Trench National Marine Monument in the Western Pacific. So we're going to talk about some of the many challenges we now face, including the U.S. promotion of deep-sea mining, attacks on our national marine monuments, attacks on offshore wind, even as the administration pushes for more offshore oil drilling, and other issues if we have time. But before all that, Angelo, we usually start with people's first connections to the sea. So briefly, what were yours?
My very first memory of the ocean that, like, even today, just I can close my eyes and still see it, is we were on the southern end of the island of Saipan, and we were at Oceanic Beach, which is a beach that my family has gone to my entire life. And there's a sort of like a cut in the reef where you can take a boat out. And I must have been 3 years old. And I can remember getting in that rowboat and gripping onto the side and looking over the top, the edge, and the boat going out over the waves and looking down and just seeing the rocks and the fish and the colors. And so it's a memory with my family, but it's also a memory that doesn't even exist anymore because those corals are long gone. In my lifetime, we've seen massive coral losses with, it seems like, a bleaching event every couple of years. So I'm that last generation that saw these great, healthy coral reefs in my childhood, and the ocean that I remember, it doesn't really exist anymore. It's changed so much in just my lifetime.
I remember I was 15 by the time I got to see my first coral reefs off of Florida, and realizing this whole other world right off the seawall. And when I was 15, it was 97% live coral cover. Today it's 2 or 3%. But a lot of us have witnessed this. Not a lot of us become ocean advocates as you have. What was your course to your present work at?
I grew up loving the ocean. I didn't know that you could have a job in the ocean. Actually, I went to college thinking that I would become a doctor. But my dad was a lawyer, so he was pushing me to be a lawyer. And I was rambunctious as a youth, so I didn't want to do what my dad told me to do. But I thought science was a really great career, and I loved physics, and I loved chemistry. But I took a conservation of tropical ecology course, and maybe I thought I would be an entomologist and learn about bugs, and I could go to the rainforest and count bugs and learn bugs. But it was in this course that I learned that a multinational corporation could come and cut down your rainforest and your life's work would be over. And when I was 19 or 20 years old, whenever it was that I took that course, it just kind of changed my perspective. And it was that people side of thing, learning what the threats are and who are the people protecting these places, that kind of became my life's interest. And the other thing that happened around the same time is that George W. Bush won the election in 2000. And so I was 21.
But did you win that election?
Yeah, that's where I was going.
Here we go.
I voted in Florida that year, and he won Florida by 585 votes. And people said they actually knocked people off the rolls that year. And my mom was one of the people who was knocked off the rolls in 2000. So I took that as a personal affront. And I said, if I had gotten involved in this campaign, maybe we would have won Florida in the presidency. And like, so it was like these two worlds coming together of like, I had these interests in science, but I realized that we had to kind of be more involved in how we were managing things. And then like on the political side, realizing the importance of elections and that elections have consequences.
Oh, do they ever have consequences? And we've been seeing a lot of the detriments with those consequences with our current leadership in the ocean. Why don't you tell us and the listeners what deep sea mining is and what the threats are?
So we thought deep sea mining was science fiction. We know that there's these places on the bottom of the ocean where these electric rocks have collected, and we could be using them for a just technology. And the batteries, they're going to help us get off of oil. These electric rocks are in all of the things that power our toys and our phones and our computers and our electric cars and all that stuff. But for most of my life, the idea of deep sea mining was science fiction. It was something that we knew could happen, but that we didn't really have the technology to get there or to get those resources, or even if we did, it would not be economically feasible to go all the way down there to extract them. The different companies that are interested in deep sea mining are developing different types of technologies, which may or may not be science fiction. They throw the word AI around a lot when they're discussing these technologies. But the different companies are looking at different technologies to get these metals, depending on where they are. And the way it plays into politics today is Trump campaigned on drill, baby, drill, right? We've heard him repeat that ad nauseum. But it's not just oil and gas that he's going after. They're talking about selling our public lands. And in this case, it's getting these minerals. And he signed an executive order, which these executive orders aren't law. It's more like an executive memo that tells the government that these are what our priorities are and this is what we want you to do. So he kind of basically told the entire government, hey, we're going to shift our focus to going after these minerals. And so NOAA, the agency that manages our ocean, previously they might have explored the ocean to understand the wonders of the ocean and see the things that are living at the bottom of the ocean so that we can learn more about themselves. But that mission has changed to be, you need to go find those minerals and you need to tell us where they are so that we can go after them. They are looking to mine the deep sea in international waters. They are looking to mine the deep sea in the exclusive economic zones of other countries. And they're looking to mine in the economic zone of the US. So it's like everything is under threat. Everything is for sale. They're not thinking this through. I mean, it sounds familiar, right?
Can you explain, because each country has their exclusive economic zone. How is it that the President of the United States can go beyond our economic zone into other countries and lay claim to all of these minerals when we are an entirely different country trying to extract materials in other countries?
It's the same way, like if you wanted to sell beer in those countries. So there are countries around the world, the Cook Islands is one of them, who are interested in mining their seafloor. So the United States government is working with them to figure that out so that the United States can participate in deep sea mining in the high seas. I somewhat flippantly said it's like selling beer. It's actually more like selling tuna. So like you control, the country controls a big exclusive economic zone. I actually know the Cook Islands their ocean is about 4 times the size of California. Like, it's an absolutely gigantic, big polygon out in the middle of the ocean. And the US is facilitating companies to go to the Cook Islands and then mine the deep sea. And they're doing the same thing in US territories. So they've started the process for deep sea mining in US waters around American Samoa, around the Mariana Islands, and then also around Alaska. And then just because apparently we're just going to mine everywhere. And David, you mentioned this, they're looking to blow up what's happening at the ISA, which is the International Seabed Authority, which they're trying to set the rules that all of the world would have to follow to allow deep sea mining on the high seas. And you're right, the US has never signed that treaty. So they're not necessarily beholden to that treaty other than norms. Well, like this is it's a recurring theme with this administration of there were all of these norms that we thought were holding our society together. And they're just throwing those things out the window and doing what they want.
Wouldn't it be somewhat risky if you were a minerals company going after deep sea mining knowing that there may be another administration that would then put a moratorium on that. So what do you think is, I mean, I know it's very valuable. I know that they're looking at anywhere between $8 and $16 trillion of value in these nodules. Do you think the economic driver is going to be so strong that even if there's a new administration opposed to deep sea mining, they'll keep going? Or what's your vision for what might happen next after Trump leaves the leadership role?
I think a couple of things could be happening at the same time. The mining itself probably won't happen for a while, right? So like right now, what they're trying to do is to secure access to those places. So they're applying for these permits. And I don't own any of these multinational companies. But maybe they're thinking, well, we're going to get access. We're going to get the U.S. to give us access, and we'll have it for the next 20 years or 10 years, and then we'll kind of figure out the politics. But I know that some of the other countries are using the ISA for leverage because the United States hasn't signed on to these treaties, other countries have. And so if you want to do business with those countries, you're going to have to follow some of the rules. The ISA, I think, is meeting, and there are news reports that a lot of these issues are being discussed right now, and threats are being made one way or the other.
And the economics seem very iffy. I mean, you have these startups like metals companies, and it's kind of speculative. They all see themselves as new tech. They all kind of want to make it sound like it's the green revolution instead of the last polluting industry to hit the bottom of the ocean. But it's hugely challenging here. It's a big issue. One of the ways to protect against industrial abuse of the ocean, be it overfishing, mining, dumping of waste, is to create marine protected areas, which is sort of my attempt to segue into something you've been involved with for years, which is the creation of these big national marine monuments. Maybe you could talk about what's going on there.
So the U.S. has one of the largest exclusive economic zones in the world, like number 2, I think, after France. And about 26% of our exclusive economic zone is in these marine national monuments, which we have monuments on land. The Grand Canyon started off as a monument. Devil's Tower is still a monument. And that's the American law that allows presidents to designate monuments, which are a type of protected area similar to a national park or a national wildlife refuge. We have 5 of these marine national monuments, and I've not led all of them. I would never claim that, but I did lead the local effort for Mariana Trench Marine National Monument. And then I've been involved in either advocacy or the management of all 5 at some point over the last 20 years. And so this is 26% of U.S. EEZ is off limits to deep sea mining. The fishing rules are different. It's actually pretty funny because we included mining as some of the restrictions, but a lot of these monuments were developed in response to the threats of industrial fishing, longline fishing, purse seine fishing. And they were never, because this threat of deep sea mining just didn't exist until a year ago. I mean, it existed as science fiction.
A threat, but not,
not a real thing. The difference between a watch and a warning.
Right. Not U.S. policy.
Yeah, exactly. In the Marianas, it's about 25% of the U.S. EEZ around our waters is part of the Mariana Trench Marine National Monument. And as a result of that, that area is off limits to deep sea mining. So with this new threat, the protected area is doing its job. That's when we came up with this idea 20 years ago. It was to keep threats like this away. Now, we've been talking about deep sea mining, but the Trump administration also wants to fish baby fish. And fishing is complicated because the U.S. eats more fish per year than we have in our ocean. And I think that's true of our oil consumption. That's true of like our energy consumption. And so even if the whole country was all of our ocean was open to fishing, there still wouldn't be enough fish in our waters to feed all the things that we use fish. We use fish for. Sometimes we eat fish, but we also grind fish up and put it in pills. We also grind fish up and use it as fertilizer. But Trump administration issued another executive order to have fisheries dominance. I forget the exact phrase. And they have specifically issued executive orders to open up 2 of those 5 marine national monuments to industrial fishing. And this would allow, in New England, it would allow longline fishing.
Is that the Northeast Canyons and Seamounts?
Northeast Canyons and Seamounts Marine National Monument. And then the one in the Pacific, it's the Pacific Islands Heritage. And they opened up they're attempting to open up about 1 million square kilometers. That's pretty big. California is about 500 square kilometers. So 2 Californias where they would allow longline fishing and then also purse seine fishing. Purse seine is where they can catch like 100 tons of tuna in a single day.
What is Rising Tide? Rising Tide is Blue Frontier's bi-weekly half-hour show that features a diversity of ocean voices from the famous to the fascinating, deep-sea explorers to whale wranglers, Arctic residents to climate justice warriors. With public broadcasting under attack, Blue Frontier offers Rising Tide and all associated content for free to community and public radio stations across the nation. We need your support to keep producing our salty, in-depth conversations. A tax-deductible donation at bluefront.org will help us keep getting the word out about our awesome blue planet. And now, back to the show.
With the ISA and the EEZ is we had these norms, and we thought these accepted social practices of how do we do things in America? How does our democracy function? And it may not have been specifically spelled out in law, but we did it for 100 years. We thought it was civilized and polite.
Precedent.
Precedent. And we thought when a president protected nature for future generations, Americans love their public lands and waters. Ken Burns called it America's best idea. What else is sacred? Are we going to open up Yellowstone or next?
Are we going to shoot the survivors of shipwrecks after we bomb them the first time? I mean, we're breaking the laws of war. We're breaking so many laws under this administration. And some of it makes no sense at all in terms of the free market. They're using emergency powers to force utilities to keep coal-fired power plants open when they're no longer profitable. And yet they're going after offshore wind.
This whole back and forth policy and instability with marine and ocean protection policies, like, what do we do with it? I mean, we're talking about it, but...
One thing that I've learned in my career is that conservation takes a really long time. Like, this shit does not happen overnight. It's a slow moving glacier. And to roll something back, it sets us back even further than we would have been if it had never been there in the first place. And I can speak to my specific example with the Marianas. It took us almost 15 years to get staff hired and a management plan agreed to and approved. And it's still a struggle to keep the advisory council engaged. And when you get this hard stop or you get this rollback, it just deflates everything. And then you come back later and you're like, hey, so remember all those promises that we made? Well, those were contingent upon the right president being in office. But this time we mean it. It doesn't build a lot of trust. And I mean, this is part of being part of a society, is the society is built upon agreed upon norms that may or may not be written down. And we're just undermining all of that with everything constantly all the time.
And we have to keep writing them down because where there is law, there is increasingly appeals. We had the head of the AFL-CIO in Rhode Island on the show. Tried to shut down all the offshore wind operations. Federal judges says you can't. It's just we have to not assume that there are any guardrails. The only guardrails left are we the people.
Let's jump into wind.
They decided that wind was the worst thing. It was killing whales. It's horrible for the environment.
It's dangerous, those big winds.
Yeah. Well, these windmills are not environmentally neutral. But when you're comparing wind energy to coal energy, the amount of carbon that's coming off of the wind turbines is clearly much lower. And the wind turbines don't have to worry about the Straits of Hormuz and Iran and being blocked because of a stupid war. But Trump wanted to roll back these 5 different offshore wind projects. You had mentioned that they were taken to court, and they have now since lost in the court 5 times. So the courts are holding in some places, because it wasn't me, it was Earth Justice and I think NRDC and I think CBD sued the administration for opening up one of those marine monuments in the Pacific. And they lost. The administration lost. They lost on a technicality because they hadn't followed the law in what they did. And now with the attempt to open up Northeast Canyons, the administration is going a little bit slower because they have been called out on what the law is. And those things which are written down in our law, we still have the courts. And I do think that this administration is pushing on the boundaries of what those laws are. Like we saw Minneapolis, right? Some of the terrible stuff that was going on there. And there's just been a number of different examples where they do something horrible, they get sued and they lose. They do something that's slightly less horrible, maybe they get sued again. And I remember even from they were doing, this was their mode of operation during the first administration when they were banning Muslims. I remember it took them like 4 or 5 times before they actually got some of those bans in place because they were just so sloppy and incompetent with the way they did things that they violated the laws. I don't see this administration being a champion for offshore wind.
No,
but
definitely not.
But I don't see them stopping the stuff that's already under construction. Plus, it's just cheaper. It's economically more feasible. Why wouldn't you want clean energy?
Well, it's actually cheaper. When we spoke with the folks in Rhode Island, once Revolution Wind goes online, 350,000 people will have less expensive utility costs, and 1,000 union workers will continue to work. They were put out of work during this. So he's promoting coal, which employs 40,000 people, and attacking clean energy, which employs 400,000 people in the U.S. today, and is still growing rapidly just for market forces, despite government attempts to suppress it.
I wanted to touch on this misconception. How did we ever get into a situation where the public thinks that offshore wind is killing whales and impacting marine mammals?
All good conspiracy theories have a kernel of truth to it. And offshore wind is not environmentally neutral, right? They have to do soundings to figure out where the right place to put the pilings are. Mm-hmm. And the same technology for an oil rig is 10 times louder. So if you're concerned about the whales for offshore wind, let me tell you about oil. If you're opposed to wind, you should be opposed to oil because it's far worse.
Tenfold. Yes.
A lot of people have the misconceptions. And so we actually need to meet people where they are and help the American people get through this difficult issue.
With your experience, Angelo, what is happening within NOAA's framework in guiding decisions about ocean protection and resource use? What's happening in the belly of the beast?
Yeah, so anytime a new president comes in, the top people at every agency get replaced. The secretary, the assistant secretary, the deputy assistant secretary, all of the senior advisors. So it's actually a normal part of democracy for all of those people to leave their job and for the new people to come in. So that's actually normal. But they seem to be going further this time. We've had anti-environmental presidents before, Reagan, W, not great. But there seems to be a much stronger commodification of natural resources. And we're seeing this in a couple of different ways. One, everything is for sale. 2, we're going to erase the history that's attached to these public lands, if it says the word DEI or black or gay. But it just seems that everything is for sale, and we're going to organize these agencies so that we can sell all of this stuff off. It's like raiding our natural treasury. The other big concern I have at NOAA is the folks who have dedicated their lives to working as government servants. They don't get into it to get rich. It's because they're bought into this idea of America and this idea of serving the public and protecting nature and people who love the ocean. And through a couple of different ways, the Trump administration has gutted the civil service. If you remember, in the first week of this administration, Elon Musk holding that chainsaw, saying he was going to take a chainsaw to the federal government. So right out the gates, they let in these Doge bros who were downloading databases, and they fired everybody who had worked there for less than 2 years. And I have at least 2 colleagues who were let go for no other reason than they hadn't worked there for 2 years yet. So all of the junior people were gone. And then they invited you to retire And so if you were close to the end, you got out. You're like I'm getting out. And so we lost all of the young people. We lost a lot of the senior people. And now they've been there for like a year and the mission has changed so dramatically. And now there's, I think, like 20 to 40% of the staff are gone. So either the work is not being done or it's being dumped on the heads of people who are already overworked. Is that a good place to work? Is that a toxic workplace? Do you want to stay there or are you looking for a new job?
So Blue Frontier suggested that people wear blue and march for the ocean when they march in the next No Kings rallies, because we can't protect the ocean and the environment without protecting democracy. And of course, vote the ocean next November. People listening, what do you say? How should people respond, do you think, in terms of the challenges we're facing?
I would do two things. One, register to vote. Like we have a political problem and there's a political solution. Our democracy is fragile. Like we're seeing how fragile it is, but it's holding, right? We still have elections. We can still vote out the worst and we can turn this boat around. The other thing that I would do is I would focus on your community. It's that old bumper sticker of think globally, but act locally. I guarantee you there is somebody in your neighborhood or in your town trying to protect a river or a watershed or a park. Join that organization. Give them $20 a month. And if we do that all across the country, that will trickle up to the national movement. But we need a 50-state strategy. We can't just protect nature in Washington, D.C. We have to protect nature in every community across this country. And who better to protect your community than you?
Yes, absolutely. Well, Angelo, it's been a great conversation and we have covered a lot. So thank you so much, Angelo Villagomez, Senior Fellow at the Center for American Progress, for joining us on the Rising Tide Ocean podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us on the Rising Tide Ocean podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen, and leave us a review or share it with your friends and other ocean lovers. Follow us on Instagram and visit bluefront.org for more updates and additional resources. Rising Tide is a production of Blue Frontier, co-hosted by David Helvarg and me, Vicki Nichols-Goldstein of the Inland Ocean Coalition, with production support from Holden Hardcastle of Fluid Studios, Natasha Benjamin, and Nick Paz, and editing services provided by Charles Landon of Studio Cape May. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay hopeful and stay salty.
Off in the salty ocean, off where the waves roll free. The sparkling water rises, then crashes to the sea. Out amongst the breakers, you'll have no need to fear. It's true, it's the blue frontier. Off in the salty ocean, off to the blue frontier.
Sparky, come here, buddy. Sparky. There you are. Good boy, Sparky.